Hi, everybody. It's Tim Hagen from Progress Coaching, and this is the second version of Why Coaching. You know, the past week I've been at my cabin, which you can see behind me, and a good friend of mine, Philip, came up with me, and we're hanging out, and we're talking, and he was having calls, and I was having calls with clients, and we kept talking about, what is coaching? Why do people need to coach? And I would tell you almost every conversation both of us had, it's centered around this thing called motivation. What motivates people? And often what we tend to do is we think about leadership and, I'm a leader and I'm a manager and I'm a person who holds people accountable and, you got to execute. Those are all valuable things. And it hit me. I'm wondering how much we really know the difference between leadership, management, and coaching. Because you know what we get, right? I don't have time to coach. Coaching is not an in addition to thing. It's something you're already doing. If you're communicating with your people, you're sending the message. So if I just tell somebody, you got a really crappy attitude, you got to do X, Y, Z, that could be management. I might even be right. The fact of the matter is, if I just tell somebody their attitude is terrible versus say, what are you going to do to successfully turn things around? What can I do to help you? Which one is going to garner a more positive response? And when people are more positive, they tend to be a little bit more willing to improve things. It's that simple. So I think about coaching and I think about leadership and I think about management. Now, when you look at the three levels of leadership is about understanding and communicating the business imperatives. Management, understanding and applying the metrics to drive performance by holding employees accountable and driving expectations. Those are valuable things. Talent development. So I think about, and I just had a conversation with somebody who said, one of the things we have to do on the front lines of our company is have decisive decision making. And it's a part of their business plan. So I asked him, what is decisive decision making? Person goes, what? I said, what's decisive decision making? The person couldn't answer me. And I said, well, does someone need to be confident? Oh, yeah, they got to be confident. Do they need to understand all the factors involved with the decision? Do they need industry or product knowledge? Oh, yeah, they need all that. I said, do they need to execute these decisions specific to your business imperatives to uphold the strategy? And is there skills required? He goes, absolutely. Decision making is a skill. I said, how are you driving that? This person looked at me and goes, what do you mean, how am I driving that? I said, you're going to have people with decision-making who don't know what decision-making is unless you define it. Skill, they're not going to just do it arbitrarily out of the blue really, really well. They're not going to be ultra confident. So what we have to remember more than anything is that when we're coaching, we're supporting management. We're supporting the leadership and imperatives. And if you're not coaching, people don't arbitrarily get better. Let me give you another example. Spoke to someone at a company, not one of our clients, and the person says, look, my people know where they need to go, and they really know what to execute. I'm holding them accountable. They know what my expectations are, and we're hitting our numbers, and that is awesome. I said, are they happy? And he stopped, and he goes, what? He wanted to say, I sense, why would I care if they were happy? And I said, so when you hit your numbers, what do you think the reason is? And he said, well, I think I hold them accountable. I said, okay. So do you ever agree that if they don't hit their numbers, they might need some further development? He said, sure. I said, well, wouldn't it be that you failed as a manager because you took credit? And he started laughing. And I said, now think about it. So we had a conversation. I said, when I look at your leadership, you love strategy. He said, I do. I said, you clearly communicate imperatives, expectations, and reinforce that. He said, yes, I do. I said, would you agree that your people have an opportunity to improve? He said, I do. I said, how often are you holding practice sessions? He said, I'm not. The reason why we coach everybody is people don't arbitrarily get better. If you have someone who's underperforming, you can't sit down and say, You got to get your numbers up. You got to perform better. Your negative attitude, by the way, which is usually practiced for a lengthy period of time, you got to make more decisive decision making. You got to show initiative. Don't let that conversation of conflict bother you. Just tell people what you're feeling. It does not work that way. So we have leadership, we have management, we have coaching. And I would even say there's a fourth leg, mentorship. I get a little squeamish because I love mentoring, by the way. I have a mentor. The problem with mentoring is it can kind of fuel a manager's view of being, directive. And management and mentoring can kind of feed off of each other. So if we're always advising someone what they need to do, that doesn't build knowledge, typically. It certainly doesn't build skill and confidence. So skill and confidence come from two things: repetitive practice and positive reinforcement. So if anyone is questioning me right now, if you think, I don't know if I believe this guy, he's kind of full of it. If you have kids in youth sports, I want you to think about this. Whether they're in youth sports now or historically, call your kid's coach and say, my kid just goes to games. If you think that's nuts, somewhere along the line, we've kind of allowed that in the workplace. Salespeople, if they're not practicing, their selling skills are not going up. Customer service, if you have angry customers, if you have not practiced those conversations with angry customers, you're not going to handle them as well as you think you could. Let me give you another one. I was at a client site about 2 months ago, and we're in a room full of 40 people, and most of the people raised their hand. We struggle with conflict. These are tough conversations, and they are for people. And I said, who would like to role play with me? I said, you can stay in your chair. I'll stand up in front of the group to do it. Now, I'm not doing that to show off. What I'm doing is actually showing I'm well practiced. I was willing to do it. I didn't do it perfectly, by the way. And that's what coaching is. So when we look at this diagram again, I go back to the fundamentals of coaching. It's about driving the knowledge and ability of each employee specific to business imperatives and strategies. So when you have imperatives like decisive decision-making, critical thinking, handling conflict, being positive, we always talk about these foundational skills like feedback acceptance, self-awareness. All of these things come into play. They do not arbitrarily happen. They don't arbitrarily happen. And here's the funny thing, everybody. So many people also coach and they don't even know they're coaching. So when you look at coachability, most of our employees haven't gone to courses in feedback. Most of our people haven't gone and said, I want to take a course on a positive attitude. And self-awareness, do you know that 85% of people significantly lack self-awareness? That's a study done by Tasha Eurich. In her study, 95% of the people in the survey said, oh yeah, I'm highly self-aware. When she tested them, only 10% were. I'm a leader. I got 8.5 out of every 10 people lacking self-awareness. 42% of people today are actively looking for jobs due to a lack of career coaching and counseling. So when someone says, I don't have time to coach, you sure as heck better not have time to interview the people that are going to leave you. What's the number one reason people quit today? It's still the manager. I'm not even saying that's fair. 71% of people are neutral or actively disengaged in the workplace. Here's the funny thing. The same organization, I love Gallup. Gallup also reports people engage 8 times more when we lead with their strengths. So think about that, everybody. Think about that. If we are not calling people into the office for the good stuff, if we're not leaving a note on their desk. I recently just started an endeavor with a division of a credit union, and all their actions, they're learning how to coach, they're scheduling their time, they're following our coaching framework, which we call QALMS, QALMS, kind of a weird name. And I said, just be positive, call them into the office, leave a note on their desk. And the manager's like, we're noticing a difference. It's been 60 days. Here's something I want to leave you with. When you are coaching to the job and what you expect out of that job, I need better performance here. We need metrics here. There's nothing wrong with that. Flip the coin over. And don't forget, you're also coaching a person who is doing that job. When you only coach, when you are a manager and you're using management, or you're a leader and you're developing strategy and resetting expectations, recommunicating, reviewing those things, that doesn't mean they arbitrarily start to do them better. That's why coaching is a non-negotiable. So do me a favor, put some of your comments in the chat. Let us know what you think about this. And I'm going to just do another little quick review. Leadership, understanding, communicating the business imperatives. Management, understanding and applying the metrics to drive performance, to say, here's the performance we need. Here are the metrics we need. Talent development, coaching. This is about driving the knowledge and the ability, as well as the confidence as it relates to the business imperatives of strategy. We all have an opportunity to improve. Let us know your thoughts. Put your comment in. Sorry for my casual background. I'm actually on vacation while I do this, but I'm going to try to do these every single week. Why Coaching? This is Why Coaching Volume 2. Thanks, everybody.